Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Trip of a Lifetime podcast with me, Celeste.
And me, Jasmine.
Well, today we're going to be talking about The Long Game, which is season 1, episode 7, I think? Yeah, 7. Or is it 6?
7.
No, 7, yeah, because we were a two-parter. Okay, it was released on the 7th of May 2005. It was directed by Brian Grant and written by Russell T Davies. And what did you think generally about this episode?
I really like this episode. I loved all the themes, and I loved the color palettes and all the little details that are inside this. Even if there isn't as many as other episodes, I still really like this. There are some parts that I did get kind of a bit not bored on, just I didn't pay much attention to comparatively to other parts.
See, normally I agree with you. Normally, I think in previous watches I've kind of been, when I've just rewatched it for fun. I think the last time we did that was in 2020 when I rewatched the entire show from season 1 to 11. Well, technically I rewatched up to Spyfall Part 2. But yeah, it was not one that I was looking forward to. It's also not one that I would just if I was going to choose an episode to rewatch just as a one-off, it wouldn't be this one. But actually, when I was properly sitting down to analyze it, although I didn't write many notes about it, I actually found there were so many underlying themes, so many references to political problems that are happening even now, if not more so now, and how relevant it is. Um, I think. I mean, we'll start off with saying that Satellite 5, this is a name that you need to remember if you're watching it for the first time. It is something that will pop up again. Not going to say anymore. First of all, let's start with Adam, okay? Because Adam, I think, in this episode serves as a foil to Rose as a character, right? Because Rose is what you should want in a companion, and Adam is what you don't want. Rose is in it for the fun, the adventure. She wants to explore and meet new, experience new cultures. Whereas Adam, he's all in it for what he can gain. It's also interestingly enough, the only time Adam, as far as I can tell, other than a couple of Big Finish audios that feature the Ninth Doctor, he's only ever appeared in one other Doctor Who Extended Universe thing, and that is a comic written for the 50th anniversary featuring the 11th Doctor and Clara, where basically the Master teams up with Adam, and this is an unseen incarnation of the Master that we haven't seen on TV, teams up with a much older, much more cynical version of Adam, and ends up kidnapping every single one of the Doctor's companions up to Clara, right? Um, and then Adam ends up actually having a change of heart halfway through, and it's like, oh no, I probably should have done this. Um, it's just interesting because actually it makes sense. Like, what's another character that's always ever wanting something for their gain and experiences things for their own gain, and that is the Master. It's all about what they want and not what they can experience, which is what the Doctor tries and aims for. But I guess Adam, as well as being what showing the audience that not every single person would be right to travel with the Doctor. There has to be, they have to have certain traits. But also, Adam here, it's very much kind of a biblical retelling. If that makes sense. You think about the creation story, right? I mean, sure, you don't have Eve in this equation, but you've got Adam Eve tempts Adam with the apple from the tree of knowledge that he shouldn't know, right? And what does Adam do? He chases knowledge that he shouldn't know and could potentially damage the future. I mean, does that technically make the Doctor God here in this equation? I mean, I guess, kinda. I mean, maybe you could argue that maybe Rose is kind of Eve because she's the one that wants him to come along in the first place back in the previous episode. You could also argue that Tamsin Greig's character, who's that nurse who basically keeps trying to manipulate him into various different surgeries, is Eve. I think actually she's probably a better fit for this metaphor. Not sure who the snake is though. But anyway, um, we're getting off topic here. But it's interesting to me that Russell himself, he's an atheist, much like I am. Yeah, and it's interesting that he chose this metaphor to go with, and I'm not sure if I mean I'm assuming it's not a subconscious thing because you call the character Adam, and that's very much if his character had been called anything else, I would have said it was subconscious. But considering he's actually named Adam, it was probably intentional. There's a quick mention to the Bad Wolf cameo this episode. I don't know why it's a cameo. You know, a reference, which is on one of the news channels. It's called the Bad Wolf TV, and it shows basically the face of Bo is currently pregnant. Um, and believe it or not, it's not the first time that character has had a child in canon. It happens quite a few times. I'm not going to say any more than that because it's a spoiler. But yeah. Then we've obviously got Simon Pegg as the editor. Now, this is prior to him becoming the big star he is now. I'd argue that he's probably an A-list actor nowadays. You could probably classify him as that. He had been in Shaun of the Dead at this point, but I'm thinking, given when World's End, no, not World's End, Hot Fuzz came out, he was probably recording or filming Hot Fuzz around the time this episode actually aired. But I can't confirm that for definite. And obviously, since then, he's gone on to be in, the prequel Star Trek films, Mission Impossible, etc. Yeah, you also have Anna Maxwell Martin, who plays Suki in this. She's probably best known for being in the sitcom Motherland. I've never watched it, but I just know it was quite a popular sitcom. I think it's finished now, but it won some or was nominated for some BAFTAs. Anyway, I think the reason why I love this episode, I realised I like this episode a lot more than I used to, is how much it touches on problems that are still very much a thing now, if not more so, and that's data sharing, like illegal data sharing, things like facial recognition software, radicalization, and the fact that and algorithms and biased media and all this kind of stuff. And it is very much and also toxic work environments. That's the other thing. So we'll go through them one by one. But like, if you think of biased media, right? In the UK, almost every newspaper is owned by an MP, and most of which are conservative. Therefore, you know, like these publications like the Times, like the Sun, are printing out views that match those of the politicians that own the magazine, own the tabloid, own the broadsheet newspaper. And so we're very much, you've got to be careful by only reading from one particular newspaper because you can end up thinking in a specific way, and that can lead to radicalization if you're not careful. But also, you've got the data sharing aspect. It's such a big thing. There's constant corporations that are constantly getting fined for sharing illegal data. You like every app and game that you go on, it's like, well, do you want to use these cookies to track you? Do you want us to? Do you want personalized ads and things like that? Because it's all using your data and the things you do. Because it doesn't matter whether you're using your credit card, whether you're using social media, whether you're going on that crossword game that you downloaded. They're all tracking you. You can't escape it. It's a bit of a. I guess it's quite scary in that regard. And it doesn't matter how many laws they put down. Like there are tons of corporations that just keep breaking them anyway.
On that theme, there's this other theme of or inferences of like journalism or corrupt higher power people.
Yeah, very much so. But that, I guess, again ties into the whole everything's owned by a few people and they're the ones that get to say. You think everything's unbiased, but it never is. Like, nothing is ever unbiased. Doesn't matter whether you're watching BBC, ITV News, Channel 4 News, it's biased in one way or another, whether, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for not, and you've got to be careful. Even if you watch a certain channel religiously, you don't have to agree with everything they say, you know what I mean? Like, you can question it, and you shouldn't be afraid of questioning things, even if sometimes you will end up being wrong because of that. Yeah, I think the other thing, toxic work environments, I mean, they literally say that they live, eat, sleep, and work on the same floor, right? I think it's supposed to be like a reference to, you know, nowadays where they have like sleeping pods in some workplaces, because what they do, and they're not there for the benefit of the employee, they're just there so the employee doesn't feel like they have to leave. They can just go take a nap there and just go back straight back to working again, because, you know, being a workaholic is just as bad as not working at all. You know what I mean? Like, you need to have that middle ground. You need to be able to have some free time whilst also being able to, you know, be productive. Yeah, and then I guess this episode is very much just set in a dystopian like future. And again, because I know in 20 years' time, people could look back on this episode much like they do on episodes of Star Trek, the original series, and look at it and go, "Oh, well, that writer has just predicted what's going to happen in the future." Like, much like, you know, you see compilations on YouTube of times Futurama or times that The Simpsons predicted the future. No, they haven't. They're just commenting on what's going on at the time. And then because nothing's changed, it's still relevant 20, 30, 40 years in the future, you know? It's the same with like 1984, like by George Orwell. People like commenting on that whole idea of Big Brother. I mean, that's what the show is named after, and actually will be relevant in a future episode of this season. Whether like, oh, they're always watching you, there's always these cameras and all these tracking. It's like, no, he's making a comment on the fact, on, you know, fascist governments, right? Unfortunately, fascism still hasn't died out, and you know, so it's very much like you know, themes are universal for a reason. It's why things like Shakespeare and stuff still resonate today, is because you can always apply aspects of novels or plays written years and years ago to what's happening now. You got something?
I have tons.
Okay.
What do you want?
I don't care.
Okay, so they also have some, I would say, foreshadowing, because at the beginning the doctor says to Adam, "Open your mind," and then later he gets that brain surgery where if you snap your fingers, your head opens for your brain to receive information.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of very clever wordplay by Russell there. Yeah.
We also have color palette or a color scheme that's relevant. So, for example, at the beginning, we continue Rose's theme of wearing like pink clothes or pinky reddy clothes. And what was nice to see was she was wearing something different as well. I mean, she has done that earlier.
I mean, she
but,
wasn't Dalek as well.
But I specifically noticed this one because of the color. I don't know why that's the specific one I noticed.
I mean, she wasn't in Quite Dead as well, because she had to change her costume because of period drama. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. Because there are in some seasons where, like Martha, for example, like her first 4 or 5, like her first 4 episodes, she's basically wearing the same outfit, mainly because it's supposed to be set within a few hours of each other.
I also have the idea, so that they also continue this throughout the color palette of the lighting. So, for example, this is also to do with the fact the temperature is different in different areas. But they have blue for the bad guys and the 100th floor.
500th.
Yeah, 500th floor. And then they also have this red color palette near where Rose and the Doctor are. And that could also relate to Rose Tyler versus Blue for the editor, or the Doctor versus Blue for the editor.
Yeah, adding into that, I think it's also to do with temperature. Like, you know, the good guy, you know, they're stuck on, what was it, 100 floor, 160 something. I can't remember. Where, you know, they're in this sweltering heat, so everything is like tinted red because of that. Whereas, you know, you've got on floor 500, you've got the icicles growing, and that's why it's so blue, is because it's supposed to be icy and stuff. And so I guess you've got, you know, the warmth of being around other people versus, you know, the cold harshness of the cold calculating corporate bad guys. I don't know. One thing I mean, this is jumping right at the end here, whilst you gather your notes. Is that last bit with Adam right at the end, right when he gets dropped off at home, and the Doctor wipes the machine of data. I found that last scene really jarring dialogue wise. Like, you know, when like the Doctor clicks the first time and Adam's like kind of like no, and then the Doctor and it clicks it back. And the next time when the doctor clicks open, there's a bit of a pause before Adam says stop it, and it's noticeable, and it throws the rhythm off slightly. And I also think the dialogue, I don't know, it's in that, it just in that little bit. I don't know, when Rose says, "Oh, sorry, I couldn't help myself," it just feels a bit forced. I don't know. Normally I'm a massive fan of Russell's writing, but I can't be overly biased. I had to mention that because it did throw me off a little bit, but it is just right at the end, just a small bit, so I don't think it takes the episode too much.
Another thing, I'm going to try not to spoil anything now, is that Nine says quite regularly now, especially in this episode. He says it at least once. He says, "I'm stupid," and he's repeated that in a previous episode or something. But in 12's speech later, like much later, in Death in Heaven, he says that as well. He adds it into the speech.
Yeah, he also, I think the ninth the 12th Doctor references himself as an idiot quite a bit. Like, he even his actual the 12's theme is literally it's called "An Idiot with a Box." Like, that is literally what Murray Gold and Stephen Moffat called it. Or probably Murray Gold actually, but whereas actually I think Tennant and Smith especially always go on about how clever they are. So it's interesting how you get one Doctor who's very self depreciating, and the next two are very high and mighty about how great they are. You know what I mean? Like Ten especially, he's very vain, very arrogant, and oftentimes quite hypocritical because of it. Whereas I feel like 12 is very no, it's not 12. 9 is very down to earth.
So there was another thing talking about characters, where Suki, which is one of the characters in it, I found that she was a nice representation because it showed that she's bold and doesn't die straight away. I know she does. Spoilers. Well, it's not spoilers because you've seen the episode. But she doesn't die straight away. She actually tries to put up a fight. Whereas in other people, I've seen them like just classically straight away die as soon as the bad guy comes on. It was a nice contrast.
Yeah, because not only does she try and fight him and the Jagrafess, but also I guess she like even after she's been killed, there's still a tiny bit of her subconscious left in the chip. That means that she does, grab the editor at the end and make sure that he gets brought down with everything else instead of escaping. Yeah. What did you think about the CGI used on the Jagrafess? Because I actually thought that was pretty good compared to previous episodes.
I do agree. I thought that was really good too, like comparatively. But there was a bit CGI I really didn't like.
What was that?
It was like the brains.
Yeah, I kind of get that. Yeah, I do. I thought like the metal and the metal around it, I thought was quite
Yeah.
good. But the actual brain, yeah, I can kind of see why you wouldn't like that. But it didn't take me out of it completely. But no, I do get that. Yeah.
Another thing about the pace, well, I haven't said. A thing about the pacing is that we slowly gain info along with the Doctor, but at the same time, we also know about the editor and the strange creature that's in the ceiling.
Yeah, I do quite like because Russell's actually done this in quite a few episodes. He did it in Aliens of London World War III with the death of the general, where he doesn't actually show the aliens straight away. He kind of tries to leave it in suspense to keep people hooked, and I do think it would work. I mean, maybe not so much for us because we already know what the monsters look like because of prior watching. Um, but certainly for a new viewer, I feel like it would be quite effective. Adding a bit of enigma in there. You got anything else?
No, I don't. But what would you rate that episode?
No, I rated it a 7/7.5 out of 10. I'm not sure which. Mainly because of the amount of themes in there, and I guess maybe because how much it resonates with me nowadays. Now that I'm a lot more conscious of data sharing and media bias and all that, especially with what's going on at the moment. How the part of the reason why the Tories are trying to privatise Channel 4 is because they criticised Boris Johnson. yeah, I appreciate the themes. I appreciated the dystopian future because we don't get that often. What did you think?
I would rate it a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. And I know that's still quite low. Well, it's not low, low, but I was going to rate it a 6, but then I changed my mind. Um, I just like, again, like you said, I like all the hidden themes and all this representation that we can correlate to modern day. But I I wasn't as keen. Like, it was really great. I like the graphics. I like loads of different elements about it. But I there are other episodes in contrast that I like a lot more.
Do you mean as in they do the same themes, or just generally other episodes you like more?
Just generally other episodes I like more. But then that might be biased as well from my point of view.
Maybe a little bit, but because you're so used to the cinematography and the effects of the Smith and Capaldi era that you're maybe not quite as used to it. Because when I came in, the only bit of the Moffat era that had released was season 5, and that's not that in tone. It's not that different from Russ. I mean, it is, but it's also not. You look at Capaldi's era; it's very different to say season 1. So I guess I'm kind of used to the slightly crappy CGI because it wasn't that bad when I started watching, and also as a kid, I didn't really notice it as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old. So yeah, I think that's everything, and I hope you'll join us next time when we review Father's Day. Um, oh, Jasmine's currently miming a crying face because it is quite a sad episode. Um, yeah, so hope to see you next time.